Learning about cooking, learning about eating, and learning about Louisiana. We're sitting and walking around here in Acadiana Village to give you a feeling, a view of what it was like in the past. The Cajun people lived close to the land. We had everything in abundance. We had the bayous and the crawfish, and everything was nearby. We just walked out and got it. What we're going to do is we're going to have an appetizer, we're going to have a main course with a vegetable, we're going to have some bread with it, we're going to have some dessert, and we're going to have a little something to drink, a little Cajun martini. And we're going to try to go through the whole thing and keep the cooking simple. The first recipe is going to be Cajun popcorn, which is one of my favorite things in the whole world. We harvest crawfish like other people harvest potatoes or corn or cotton or whatever, and we got 150,000 acres of this planet in Louisiana, and you see this wonderful way of getting into the water and getting the crawfish out, and these little live things running all around here. They're wonderful tasting. I mean, they just really taste good. And the way you get to the goodness is to boil them first. It actually has a lot of names besides crawdads, but we don't like to call it that, or other mud bug. We don't call it that either. This is a wonderful tasting thing. And the difference between a crawfish and a crawdad or a mudbug is that the crawfish, the mudbug lives in Texas in the dirt, and the crawfish lives in Louisiana in the mud. And it's a lot better because it lives in the mud, kind of wallows in and has a good time and don't have to go very far to get his meal. And so it gets nice and fat, and as you see, there's a whole bunch of fat in the tail there. And to get to the fat and the meat, you have to take the first two rims of the shell off, and then you take your finger or your thumb and you squeeze on it. You actually pinch the tail, and we take the meat right out. And that's what a crawfish tail looks like. Now, for this particular dish, which we call crawfish popcorn, we take and dip this in a very thin batter, and we drop in a deep fryer, and it just comes out wonderful. I mean, it just absolutely comes out marvelous. It gives it a nice crunchy texture to it. But I think that I'll show you the whole thing here. This is what it looks like, and this what it. It's crunchy. It's good. When you take a bite of food, like I just took a bite of the crawfish, why do we batter crawfish? Why not just eat it boiled? Why not just take it and heat it up? The reason you batter it is to change the taste, or to add taste to the taste that's already there. And when you put it in your mouth and you start chewing it, different things happen. Now, for instance, with this fried crawfish, what really happens is that the flour and the milk and the eggs form a crust on top. And that crust, you could tell when I was chewing it, that crust was crunchy. And that adds texture. It's nice to taste that crunchiness and to chew on something when you're eating. If you've ever just had a dish of pasta with a nice, wonderful, rich cream sauce, with nothing else in it, just the pasta and the cream sauce. When you finish eating, you'd be full. I mean, you'd be full, but you'd still want something. And what you would want is a crunchiness, because if you would have had a piece of meat in there in the pasta, or if you'd have had something else in there that was crunchy, that had texture to it, some vegetables, then it would have satisfied all your senses. So what we're trying to do with this crawfish tail is improve the taste, to make it taste better, to give it dimensions in taste, where it just keeps going when you start chewing, and to make it taste better. And then we add a sauce to it. Now, the sauce is a fairly simple sauce that can be made, again, the day ahead, 2 days ahead. But it's really good with crawfish crunchiness that way, and it just really tastes good. Now, here's a list of the ingredients, and while you look at the list, I should tell you that I'm not going to follow the recipes exactly the way you see them or the way they're written. It's just more fun to be creative while you cook. Now we're adding the egg and we're adding the tomato sauce, and we're going to add all the ingredients except the oil. Now in doing that, what we want to do is tie these ingredients together. We want to take the egg yolk and the ketchup and the green onions and the Creole mustard, and we want to create a mixture. We want to create an event of taste. And then we want to make that taste light. We want to make it airy. We want to make it delicious. And we want to make it where you pick up different tastes at different points. Now, we're going to start the machine. Now, we're mixing the ingredients. But we're putting air into it. Now we're going to put the seasoning into it. As the machine turns and it catches the air and it fluffs the egg yolk, we're going to add the final touches of seasoning. Now, the most important part to tie all this together and to make it a sauce and to make it taste good is to add the oil to it. Now, we've got air bubbles worked in here, and we've got these ingredients sort of ground up together. Now, by adding the oil, we're filling these air bubbles with oil and giving it a richness that you can't get any other way. I mean, you have to add butter oil to it to do that. And in this, I mean, it just makes the taste work, and it ties it together. But let's get a taste of it and see how it tastes. I don't want to say anything else about that. But while you're looking at some more ingredients, and this is for the Cajun popcorn. Now, I'd like to talk to you about those air bubbles. Now, we're going to put the eggs in and we're going to start beating them. Now, the air bubbles are so significant in so many different dishes when you can take eggs and make air bubbles with them by beating them this way. Now, what we're doing, you see them getting frothy? We're actually adding air bubbles. We're creating air bubbles, and you'll see them first big, then they'll get smaller and smaller and smaller. When you got, say, a double in bulk from the whipping, and then you can start, you see some of the air bubbles floating on there? Now we're adding sugar to it. The reason we're adding sugar is to take those bubbles that we've made, and you know how sugar's sticky when you touch it and get it wet? Well, we actually, with the whip, putting the sugar into those air bubbles to strengthen them, because we're going to use the air bubbles a different way than we did in the last recipe, and when we did it in the machine. Now here we're adding the seasoning. Now I'm adding it at this point simply because, again, I want to disperse the seasoning in the air bubbles. Now, this is the part that you need very strong air bubbles to do. You need them to hold up, and you're adding flour to it and corn flour. Now, in between these two, you're going to make a paste. The reason you're going to make a paste is because this sauce ends up very, very thin. Now, when you have a thin sauce, and you see right now it's thick, but we haven't added the milk to it yet. But we want to get it we want to get all the ingredients we can in it before we add the milk, because if you add the milk too soon, what's going to happen is when you add the flour to the milk, it's going to cause lumps. Now see, by making it this thick and actually making a paste with it, there's no lumps left in it. Now we're going to add the milk to it and thin it out, because this, as you're going to see very shortly, is a very incredibly thin batter. Now the idea of the batter is to cover whatever you're going to cook. In this case, it's either shrimp or crab meat or crawfish, and we're doing popcorn, and it's crawfish popcorn. But you can also do crab meat popcorn. You can do shrimp popcorn. But you're making this batter super, super thin, and you don't want it to have lumps in it, and you want it to coat. You see how it coats the finger? And you can see through it. I mean, you can literally see through this batter. But we're going to take these wonderful crawfish tails that already taste good, and we're going to add some seasoning to it. Now we have seasoning in the batter. Now we're going to put seasoning in the crawfish, because I believe that you have to season every step of the way, so each thing has a taste of its own. So nothing should not have its full ability to taste. And by seasoning the crawfish and by adding the batter to it, then you're making it taste good. Now the oil have to be, that's really important. It has to be at the proper temperature. Now for 350, 360 degrees, and if it's good and hot, you drop the crawfish in just one or two at a time. See how it's just dropping it in. So now watch the oil if you're using this kind of fryer so it don't run over. And the way to do that is just simply lift the basket like you see here, and the foam will go down to it. But you want to add the crawfish to it, and you want to cook them very quickly, because actually what you're doing is reheating them and creating this wonderful crust which just makes it talk to your taste buds. Oh, it's so good. this thing tastes incredible. I mean, it just, it just gets in your mouth and it just goes, wow, and it just runs around. I mean, it's really wonderful tasting. When you go to cook blackened redfish, you have a black iron skillet. It's got to be hot. It's got to be really hot. Now, it can be too hot, but it's got to be hot. You take a fillet of fish. It's got to be a firm flesh fish, and there's several kinds of fish you can use. You can use, the best thing is redfish. You can use 3/4 inch steaks of tuna, 3/4 inch steaks of it makes it taste better. Whatever's there is going to be more. And so you got to have fresh fish, because if it's not, go try whatever fish you can get fresh in your area. Try what's around you, and try the cooking method with it. But let's get on with the cooking method. You take an iron skillet and you put this, you dip the fillet of fish in butter, take it out and season it, and then when it's seasoned, you drop it in the skillet. When you do so, what happens is the enormous amount of heat that's in the skillet pushes up on the fish, and it just holds it just a little bit above the skillet, and it starts turning it black, concentrates the juices, it caramelizes the surface, and it just gives it incredible taste. I mean, the taste just goes in your mouth when you taste it. And just to give you an idea of how incredible the taste is, I'm gonna go, this is a blackened redfish. I mean, this is a real redfish, and it's been blackened, and here we go. Oh, let's go cook one. Oh, it's delicious. Would you like a taste? Come on, let me give you something. Have some. Oh. Isn't that sweet? Isn't it good? Blackening is the cooking method of the 80s. And we'd like to show you how to do blackened redfish. And it's very simple to do. And we're going to try to keep it simple. You've got unsalted butter that's melted. We put the fish in it. We're going to sprinkle the seasoning on. Now, you just want to sprinkle it on. If it's too hot or if the seasoning starts to dominate, you've lost it. You want to taste the fish, and you want the seasoning there to help the taste change, or to help the fish taste better. Now that's the seasoning. Now let's get to the cooking. You see how hot this pan is? I mean, it's really important for the pan to be hot. You see how much smoke is being delivered? I mean, that's an incredible amount of smoke. The pan's so hot, the fish is not even sticking to it. See it move when it was shaken? And that's important steps to it. We've taken a pan and cut it away so you could really see what's happening, the cooking method. See the steam coming from underneath the fish. The steam is creating a levitation. That's why it's not sticking. And see how I turned it black? This slow motion is wonderful. I love to watch this because I can taste the redfish getting juicy and sweet and wonderful. This cooking method leaves all the juice on the inside, and it creates this wonderful crust on the outside. It creates this wonderful taste change. You've never tasted anything like it. You know, there's always a controversy about what's better, new or old, different, the things that they're making now. One of the things that I can tell you ago was better. The reason it was better was very simple, because they used pure yeast. They used cake yeast, which was a soft yeast that gave the bread a wonderful, sparkling yeast taste to it. And I'll tell you, there's nothing more dramatic than tasting yeast in bread. I mean, to have a piece of bread and to break it open and to smell the aroma of the yeast. That's why you put yeast in it, to make it light and make it fluffy and give it a lot of taste. Today, we use too many kinds of yeast food. We use too many kinds of yeast substitute that just don't give it the flavor that yeast does. You know, when you're making a loaf of bread, now this bread is very, very simple. You use water, you use salt, you use a little bit of sugar, you use flour, and you use yeast. I mean, that's all there is to it. Yet it has a wonderful complexity of taste that the yeast gives it. The thing that I like about baking and I like about bread is that you can do anything once you have your dough established. It takes the exact ingredients. You have to have the exact amount of flour, the exact amount of salt, the exact amount of sugar each time. But once that's established and you know you have a good loaf of bread, you can put anything in it. You can put meat in it, you can put vegetables in it, you can put onions in it, you can put anything, and it just gets better.
I think the most important thing to show you is that how simple this is. I mean, there isn't a complex thing to it. You want to make the dry yeast that this recipe is going to call for, because we know you can't get the cake yeast or the wet yeast that I prefer using and do use when making bread. If you take the dry yeast and you add a little sugar to the water, and you take lukewarm water, add a little sugar to it, and then you put the yeast in it, and you'll see it'll sort of cake up like it is, like we're showing you now, and it'll turn the water sort of. You want to watch the yeast start to grow, and there's several things that happen here that I think is important. One is that it seems to give that dry yeast a new dimension and taste. It seems to make it as close to cake yeast as you possibly can get in a finished product. But also it proves the fact that this yeast is alive and it's well, and it's going to create a light bread for you. So to sit there and watch it grow is an important step, and it's almost a wonder of nature. I mean, I just love to sit there and watch it just sort of bubble and grow and get foamy and frothy. And when his head comes on it, you know it's ready to use. I think one of the real experiences of life is making a loaf of bread, and understanding the real simplicity of it. Yet, if you use the proper ingredients and you put them together right, the taste is just awesome. Now, some of the hints you can do is and I'm not doing them here, but if you put all the dry ingredients together, and if it's your first time you make it, then you mix them really thoroughly, especially if you're doing it by hand. If you're doing it with a machine, it really doesn't matter. You can sort of put the dry and the wet ingredients together. But when the final thing you should add is the yeast mixture, because you got this head on it and you got all the dry ingredients in the bowl, and you want to make a dough out of it, or you want to make a solid mass. So you put the yeast mixture in and leave the machine that you're using, the mixer, on a fairly low speed. And as it starts to become a ball, or as it starts to become a dough, you can sort of pick up the speed of it, as you've seen there. Now here we have an actual dough. We have an actual ball of dough that we're going to finalize, or we're going to take it through the final steps. Now you got to put a little flour on the table and put some on your hands so it don't stick too much to you. And you want to test out the dough to see how it feels. A really good dough should feel silky, and it should feel just so wonderful to touch. I mean, it's something that's alive, and it just moves with your hand. And it's just silky to feel. It's just wonderful to feel. Once you start getting that feeling of it, there's a way you can check it by taking a little piece of dough and spreading it out. And if it sort of, you can almost see through it, and it sort of gets thin, and you know that you're getting close to the texture that you need with the dough. The next step that I think it's critically important is the rising part of it. Now what happens here is that you want to grease a bowl and put it in, but the rising part that really is important, it starts the fermentation, and it starts this expansion of the yeast, and it's this wonderful thing that makes a loaf of bread alive, this creation. And you got to let it happen more than one time. And once it's risen, you got to knock it down, like, that's it, blow it up. And then you take it and you go through the same method of checking it again and making sure that everything is right in it, because that's one point you could knead it more. But if it's right and everything feels good about it, the next part is you want to take the shape that you need. And here we're going to do a roll shape, or almost like a biscuit shape to it, that I remember so often in my life coming back from school and seeing these hot and smelling these hot, warm yeast breads were just so incredible. I mean, Mother had just fixed them, and you'd come in from school and you'd get 2 or 3 of them, and you'd put your finger in them and coat them with butter and fill them with syrup, and then get a raw sweet potato and take them out and go to work in the field. But back to bacon. See, what we're doing here is the kneading process another time, and it's the final kneading process to create the little bitty loaf, or the muffin or the small loaf of bread that we're going to create with. And by rolling it in your hand, you feel it start to get round, and you feel it start to come together, and it's almost alive as it rolls in your hand. And here we're going to go really fast because we don't want to do it over and over again and put the final two in. Now you got to let it proof again. I mean, just got to go back to that same sort of souring method to give it the taste and give it the texture. And isn't that wonderful? I mean, isn't that like something that's alive and living? And there it is. And I mean, just give me the syrup and butter.
Learning to cook should be fun. Probably the most fun part of learning to cook is experimenting. This is one recipe, making a good bread pudding, that you can really experiment with. Anything goes into a good bread pudding. You can put nuts in it, you can put raisins. Basically what you have is old bread. It should be very stale, should have been set away somewhere, gotten hard. You should put it in the oven and toast it to give it a nice nutty flavor. Make you a good milky, eggy liquid with anything you like in it and put them together. Makes you a wonderful bread pudding. We have here 2 sauces to go with bread pudding. Now to some people that may seem exotic, but on the bottom we have a lemon sauce. And this is basically just a lemonade. It's a hot lemonade that's been thickened a little bit. What that does, the acid in that counteracts the sweetness of everything you've done here and really just gives it an off, behind, in your mouth taste, just up high in your mouth. And the whipped cream that we've added to it gives it a richness that you can't get with bread pudding normally. Now if you put all 3 of them together and you have a bite with some lemon on it and the bread pudding and the cream, all of a sudden you've taken leftover stale bread and you've just made it where it just fills your mouth with taste. I mean, I can taste sweet, and just the vanilla is just barely coming on now. And then it drops and you get the creaminess of the cream, and then you have the acid and you have the lemon just to clean everything out after. It's absolute, try it. It's just wonderful.
I'm going to try to show you how I think about ingredients and how I think about creating a dish and how I put my stamp on it. Now, for instance, here we're going to take the eggs and we're going to whip them. Now, I know if I'm making a cake, I got to cream the eggs and the sugar together. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to whip the eggs until they're incredibly frothy because I want this to be light, and I want the eggs to help it to be light. I'm not putting baking powder in it, but I want it light anyway. Now I'm going to add the sugar to it, and this is going to strengthen those air bubbles and make them really strong and make them live and stay, so when I apply heat to it, it's going to get light. Now also think about hollandaise sauce. Now I've got all these ingredients together, and I'm thinking, how do I make them taste best? How do I put them together to get the ultimate taste out of them? All right, so when I make a hollandaise sauce, I put eggs and I whip them, and then I add butter to it, and I whip them. Now here I've added sugar, but I'm still putting the butter into it, and now the taste, when you taste it, it's incredible. I mean, you've got sweetness, and you've got all these wonderful things together, and you're getting the ultimate taste out of it. So what I'm saying is use your imagination. See, here I'm using a nutmeg and cinnamon and pecans and raisins and vanilla, but do what you want. I mean, you put peaches in it, put apples, put apricots, put bananas, put whatever your own creativity says will taste good. But remember, you got to watch it change, and you got to taste after each bite, and you got to understand how those changes are taking place. But it's not that complicated. You can do that. I mean, we all can do it. You got to keep tasting, and you got to just let yourself go. Now, see, I like that. And that's what's important. I liked it. Now I'm going to add the milk to it, and I'm going to finish the product. Now, I've got a really strong tasting, lots of incredible flavor mixture. And I know that it's got to be strong, because if it isn't really strong, it won't come through. I mean, I won't, the taste that I want to end up with, that I want to finally taste in my pudding, has got to come through all this toasted bread, which all it has is a nutty taste and an incredible amount of flour and a blandness to them. I mean, this bread is dried out in the oven until it's crispy, crispy, crunchy. I mean, you can hear it. Listen. Now I want you to use your imagination and just do this recipe and taste the bread after it's soaked just for a couple of seconds. And then taste it again later and again later. And when it gets wet like you see it now, I mean, you'll know what I mean when I say use your imagination. The taste will be there when it's soggy and wet. And it needs to continue to be wet because you're going to put it in a very hot oven. And this oven is going to take a lot of the moisture away from it. And it needs to rise, it needs to grow. The whipped eggs need to work in it. And when things rise, it dries them out for them to rise. I mean, that's an automatic thing of cooking when you apply all that heat. So you need moisture left in it like you see around the bowl now. Now I've used my imagination and tried to share it with you. Now use yours and take stale bread and turn it into whatever you want. Enjoy it. Have fun. Turn yourself loose and let it dance in your mouth. Chantilly cream is a really easy thing to make. What we're going to do is take some good heavy whipping cream and going to whip it until it starts to get thick. And this will just take a few seconds to whip it. Then we're going to add things to it to enhance the taste or to make it what we call Chantilly. And one of the ingredients we got to add is sour cream. And you want to wait until it starts to get kind of heavy. You see it's still starting to get thick there. And then we're going to add the sour cream to it. And then you have two tastes. So you have two tastes of cream. You have the sour and the sweetness of those two creams. And you want to stir it a little bit just to get all the lumps of the sour cream out, because if you don't do that, I mean, the lumps will be there and they'll sort of won't taste too good in your mouth if the lumps stay in. And then you're going to duplicate, or you're going to build on the ingredients that you added into the bread pudding. And you're going to add sugar to it. You're going to add some vanilla to it. And I think building on those ingredients and making them diversify, because you've cooked with the vanilla before and now you're going to use it cold, so it'll have two different tastes. Then you want to really get separate, and you're going to add brandy and Grand Marnier to it, and the orange in the Grand Marnier and the aromatics of the brandy is going to give you a whole different view of this cream on top of your bread pudding. And it's going to give you that changing that you're looking for and that diversity of taste that makes something very special. Talk about simplicity. This is simplicity within itself. I mean, this is, again, we're repeating a few of the things that we had before, like the vanilla and the sugar and so on. But let's just watch. I mean, this is really a simple thing to do. I'm adding the vanilla in here with the cornstarch to make sure there's no lumps in the cornstarch, and stirring it out really good. And now that everything's come to a good strong boil, you add the lemon juice as a finish. And that's all there is to it. Oh, that's good.
Cajun martini is one of those things you just got to have with a Cajun dinner. So next time you're having Cajun dinner, get the peppers out, get the vodka or gin bottle out, and leave the vermouth where it's at, and get a hold of something. Don't have more than one, because you'll never taste whatever else is going on that evening.
You know, so many things in life just sort of happen and you don't know why. Cajun martinis happen for a reason. We didn't want to serve hard liquor at the restaurant, so we felt that creating a drink and putting food in it might be fun. So many of our European friends that are in the kitchen, that are in the food industry, put their booze in the food. We didn't want to do that, so we thought we'd put a little bit of food in the booze like we're doing here with the cayenne pepper. Now, to make the Cajun martini, you drop the cayenne pepper in with the exposed seeds in it. You got to split it first, like you've seen. Then you add the vermouth to it, and then you refrigerate it overnight, at least 24 hours, but no more than 48 or it's going to get too hot. Then you serve it with your favorite garnish. Here we're putting in a pickled green tomato, and this one's been pickled with peppers, so it's a hot pickled green tomato. You can serve it with olives or whatever you like. And then you pour it straight up right over the garnish, and then you take a big, and you, oh.
There's no better way to end a meal, a Cajun meal that is, than a good cup of coffee. And this is coffee with chicory in it, and it's nice and dark and rich. I hope y'all enjoyed the time that y'all spent with me. I enjoyed mine, and I hope that you learned something, that you had a good time, and that you're going to do more Cajun. Thank you.
I know that the gumbo and casserole will make you take a bite. Your tongue will thank you. Try it, you like it. Be good to yourself. Try the Cajun way with a dance and a romance and a food that's enchanting. A music and a fire, you like it like we do. Try it, you like it. That's the Cajun way. I know what I like. I know what I like. I know what I like. I like excitement every